Frank, welcome back to the program, and thanks for what you do at the Center for Security Policy in D.C.
Thank you so much for having me, Lars. Great to talk with you, and thanks for what you do, my friend.
Let me get your, well, I appreciate it. Let me get your initial take on what happened and how we protect Americans against threats like this, because it seems like a nearly impossible task.
There are tasks that are, if not impossible, extraordinarily hard, and this is one of them. I think, as a nation, we simply have not, contemplated, let alone prepared for the possibility that people would take advantage of open-air theaters that can be overseen by adjacent buildings to pour hot lead by the thousands of rounds into the masses gathered below. I mean, it's not that that's inconceivable. It's just evidently we had, as you may remember, Lars, the 9/11 Commission said after it finished assessing what happened on that fateful day in 2001, we had a failure of imagination. Unfortunately, the bad guys, of whom there are many, who wish to do us harm overseas as well as here, lack no such imagination. And trying to stay ahead of them, trying to anticipate what they might do, trying to prevent all opportunities for them to do it, whether it's with automatic weapons or whether it's with trucks or, handmade bombs in pressure cookers, is an exceedingly difficult task. And I think what we're going to find is, as a nation, we're going to have to start imagining much more aggressively what people hopefully we'll be able to think through who they are and what would motivate them to do this sort of thing. But we're also going to have to think of the tactics that they're likely to employ to harm as many of us as they can.
I guess I wonder, Frank, the reason I say it's nearly impossible is this guy didn't seem to give off a lot of warning signs. Even 2 days into it, we're not hearing much of anything that you might have learned from the outside, the authorities might have learned. I mean, he may have had financial problems. He may have had girlfriend problems. Who knows? But at this point, nothing solid seems to pop up. And on top of that, if you were to say, let's take every open-air venue in America, or most of them, and try to figure out a way to keep somebody from using a high vantage point to hurt people, to kill people, it's a virtually impossible task. I mean, because
sure.
How do you do that if the man's willing to rent a room, apparently plan the event somewhat well in advance, at least back to Thursday of last week, and probably to rent that room in a specific room on a specific side of the building, maybe even months ago. We don't know the details on that yet, but I suspect we're going to find out that it was probably planned some time ago. And how do you protect people? Just say we're not going to have open-air venues? That doesn't seem very realistic either.
No, it doesn't, and there would be a profound impact on the economies of a lot of localities if you were to do that, needless to say. The thing that it seems to me can help, Lars, is what I think of as kind of the security counterpart to the medical practice known as triage, which is start with trying to do what you can to identify and render incapable of doing harm to us like this people who are being recruited, people who are being indoctrinated, people who are being motivated and enabled to engage in these kinds of acts of violence. As you said, we're not clear whether that was the case in this instance, and that's what makes this a particularly hard one. But we are clear that, for example, there are lots of people in this country today who are being incubated in jihad in mosques and facilities with exactly this purpose. Now, the Islamic State declared before this incident that they were putting us on notice, that they are coming for us, and they are coming for us in venues where lots of people can be hurt. They were warning us, in effect. Now, was this guy acting on their behalf? They say he was. We don't know. But I can just say that if you are thinking about this in a prudent, precautionary way, start with making it more difficult for people we know pursue a totalitarian doctrine called Sharia supremacists, and make a special effort to ensure that they can't do this kind of thing to us, as well as work against others, including people who are genuinely acting individually and perhaps without any warning at all.
Frank, let me ask you about one detail that we do know about Stephen Paddock, and that is he was apparently, according to his brother, a millionaire, a multimillionaire. He liked to gamble, and he sent $100,000 to the Philippines, although his girlfriend is apparently from the Philippines or has family there, and there might be a perfectly logical explanation there. But would you mind explaining to my audience what else we know about the Philippines and certain groups that operate there?
Yeah, well, we know that the Philippines were used in some of the planning that has gone into previous attacks, including the Oklahoma City bombing. There are jihadists there for sure. There are people, interestingly enough, one of my colleagues reported that before the Oklahoma City bombing, there was word on the streets that jihadists were looking for so-called lily whites, people who had no record, people who would not have a police trail on them. And they found a couple of guys to help blow up that building, I believe. But, that's not the official line, but I think there's circumstantial evidence to suggest that. But my point is this, Lars, the Philippines is a nexus for Sharia supremacists bent on jihad, and a lot of poor people, some of whom get access to this country as, domestics or other workers. And it creates a place from which you can see plots perpetrated. I don't know if that's true in this case. We just don't know enough yet. But I'm always alarmed. And I remember vividly getting a call like this the night that the Fort Hood massacre went down. And you said the police are telling us, the FBI is telling us there's no act of terrorism here, folks. I'm always struck by how fast they tell us that, even when they can't tell us what was going on.
By the way, Frank,
who this was, how it was motivated.
On that point yesterday, when the Islamic State came out and claimed credit, and apparently I'm told they claimed credit through an online magazine that has been wrong one time in claiming credit, but right all the rest of the times. And it was amazing to me how quickly the FBI came out. And they didn't say, well, we're looking into it, or it could be. They said, no, that's not it. And I thought, boy, that was quick. How'd they determine that quickly?
It's always quick that they discount that, but they can't tell us what the motivations were. How can that be, Lars?
I don't know.
How can it be both?
It doesn't make sense. And you kind of wonder, depending on what his personal background was, if he was an angry person, if he was obviously he's an angry person if he's murdering people wholesale, but what was he angry about and who was he trying to take it out on? Would a disaffected individual be inclined to not only take the lives of fellow citizens, but also to act on behalf of a foreign entity like the Islamic State? It seems like he could be the perfect individual, and with the level of wealth that he had, he might have had the ability to do that, to access the weapons, to do the travel and everything else, and might have decided this is how I'm going to go out. Frank, I really appreciate the time, and thanks so much for the work you do at the Center for Security Policy.
Thank you, Lars.